All right, so we're diving into self-improvement today, but with like a fascinating twist. We're not just talking about like the usual stuff.
Right.
We're looking at how people, specifically developing countries, can find success and like with less effort.
Exactly.
So you stumbled upon this idea of pattern recognition, and it sounds super intriguing.
It is.
You even sent over this book, The Invisible Advantage, by Muammar Lone, to help us unpack it all.
Yeah, the book really digs into this idea that effortless success, it's not about luck or, some secret formula or anything.
Right.
It's about aligning with these naturally occurring success patterns.
Success patterns.
Yeah, and they exist everywhere.
Everywhere. Like we're talking about patterns in human behavior, financial markets, even nature.
Exactly. The book argues that these patterns, they exist in every aspect of life.
Wow.
And those who can recognize and utilize them, they can achieve extraordinary results with, seemingly less effort.
Okay, so less grinding, more lining.
Exactly.
I like the sound of that. But there's this one part that really caught my attention.
Okay.
The author claims there's a closing window, about 18 months, for humans to develop this ability because of how digital overload is rewiring our brains.
Right.
It's like we're losing this ability to see the patterns.
That's one of the core arguments in the book.
Really?
Yeah, Lone suggests that this constant bombardment of information, it's actually making it harder for us to reach a state of deep focus and clarity, which is, essential for pattern recognition.
So it's not just about learning a new skill, it's about preserving an existing ability that's slowly fading away.
Exactly.
That's a pretty compelling hook.
Yeah.
So tell me, where does this deep dive take us?
Well, we'll be exploring this idea of a pattern gap that's widening between those who can and can't see these patterns.
Oh, interesting.
We'll look at what those patterns actually look like, and most importantly, what you, the listener, can do to potentially unlock this ability while you still can.
Okay. I'm ready to unlock some patterns.
Me.
So let's start with the book's opening argument about the effort trap.
Okay.
This idea that many of us are stuck in this cycle of believing harder work automatically equals more success.
It's a deeply ingrained belief, isn't it? I mean, we're constantly told to hustle harder, grind it out,
Right.
But the book challenges this notion,
Okay.
suggesting that it's not about sheer effort, it's about working smarter, not harder.
That makes sense. I mean, we've all experienced those moments where we put in a ton of effort and get minimal results, while other times things seem to flow effortlessly.
Right.
So is the book saying we should just ditch hard work altogether?
Not exactly. It acknowledges the importance of hard work, but argues that it's not the only factor, and in many cases, not even the most important factor in achieving success.
Interesting.
It highlights research from institutions like Harvard, Stanford, MIT, showing there are diminishing returns on effort in a lot of fields.
So how do these select individuals, the ones who seem to effortlessly glide to success, how do they do it? Are they just born with some sort of success gene?
The book suggests it's not about genetics, but about aligning with existing success patterns, almost like tapping into a hidden code. It's about understanding the underlying principles that govern success in any given area, and then aligning your actions with those principles.
Okay, but how do we know these patterns even exist? Is there some kind of scientific basis for this?
Absolutely.
Really?
The author Muammar Lone, he delves into the neuroscience of this.
Okay.
He explains how our brain activity actually reveals different cognitive states tied to our performance.
Okay.
He identifies 3 primary states: force, random, and aligned.
Okay, break those down for me. Force, I'm guessing that's our default mode, like just pushing through, gritting our teeth, and willing ourselves to succeed.
Exactly. It's that classic grind, but the research suggests it's not very efficient.
Right.
It leads to burnout, frustration, and ultimately diminishing returns.
Got it. And random, I'm picturing those moments of serendipity, those lucky breaks where things just seem to fall into place.
Precisely. It's that feeling of being in the right place at the right time, but it's fleeting, unpredictable, and not something you can rely on consistently.
So aligned must be the sweet spot, the state these effortlessly successful individuals seem to operate in.
Exactly. It's a state where effort is minimized and results are maximized.
Wow.
Lone describes it as a state of neural efficiency where your brain is working effortlessly, almost like it's on autopilot.
That sounds amazing, like a superpower.
Right.
But isn't that just something you're either born with or not?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Lone argues that this aligned state is a skill anyone can develop. But there's a catch.
Uh-oh.
He believes that our increasing reliance on technology and the constant influx of information is actually rewiring our brains, making it harder to reach this state.
So it's like a race against time. We have to learn this skill before we lose the ability to learn it altogether.
In a way, yes.
This is starting to feel a bit like the Matrix, where some people can see the code of reality while others are just bumping into walls.
That's a great analogy.
Really?
That's exactly what we'll be unpacking in the next part of this deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore what this code looks like, how it manifests in different areas of life, and most importantly, how you can potentially unlock it for yourself.
Okay, I can't wait. Okay, so my mind is officially buzzing with all these ideas about success patterns and cognitive states.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
It is. I have to admit, I'm still a bit fuzzy on what these patterns actually look like.
Okay.
We're talking about mystical signs or like secret formulas?
Not quite, haha.
Okay.
The book uses the example of financial markets to illustrate this concept.
Okay.
Lone explains how individuals who are aligned with these success patterns, they see the market not as a series of random events,
Right.
but as an interconnected system with flows and structures that reveal hidden opportunities.
So it's like they have a different lens through which they're viewing the world. A lens that reveals these underlying patterns that others might miss.
Precisely.
Okay.
And what's fascinating is that the book argues these patterns exist everywhere,
Really?
not just in finance. They exist in relationships, personal growth, creative endeavors, pretty much every aspect of life.
Okay, so let's bring this back to the listener's initial question about self-improvement on a global scale,
Okay.
particularly for individuals in developing countries.
Right.
Could this concept of pattern recognition be a key to unlocking their potential?
Absolutely. To finding ways out of poverty and achieving greater success. That's where this idea gets really powerful. If success is not just about hard work or luck,
Right.
but about aligning with these existing patterns, then it levels the playing field for everyone.
Oh, wow.
It means that individuals in developing countries who may face significant challenges and limitations,
Yeah.
they can still achieve extraordinary results by learning to recognize and utilize these patterns.
It's like having a secret weapon, an invisible advantage that can help them overcome obstacles and achieve a level of success that might have seemed impossible before.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual success. It's about societal progress. Imagine if we could teach these pattern recognition skills to entrepreneurs in developing nations, empowering them to create thriving businesses and lift entire communities out of poverty.
That's a powerful vision. It's like giving them the tools to not only navigate the existing systems,
Right.
but to potentially reshape those systems for the better.
Exactly.
But how do we even begin to develop this ability? Lone introduces this framework called the recognition code, which sounds pretty complex.
It might sound intimidating, but it's actually a very practical framework.
Okay.
Lone breaks it down into 3 core components:
Wow.
cognitive flexibility, the recognition window, and integration velocity.
Okay, let's unpack those one by one. Cognitive flexibility.
Yeah.
To me, that sounds like being adaptable, open to new ideas, and able to think outside the box.
You got it. It's about training your mind to be more agile, to shift perspectives easily, and to see connections where others might not. It's like learning a new language. The more fluent you become, the more effortlessly you can navigate different situations and understand different perspectives.
I love that analogy. So if we want to develop this cognitive flexibility,
Yeah.
we need to be actively challenging our assumptions, learning new things, and exposing ourselves to different ways of thinking.
Exactly. It's about constantly stretching your mental muscles and breaking out of rigid thought patterns. Now, the second element, the recognition window, is a bit more daunting.
Yeah, this is the part about the closing window of opportunity, right?
Yeah.
The idea that due to digital overload, we only have a limited time to develop this skill.
That's the alarming part.
Uh-oh.
Lone suggests that we have a window of about 12 to 18 months to really cultivate this ability, after which it becomes exponentially harder.
Whoa. That puts a sense of urgency on things.
All right.
But what can we do? We can't exactly stop the influx of information or reverse the effects of technology.
Well, while we can't completely escape the digital world, we can be more mindful of how we engage with it. The book suggests practices like mindfulness meditation and spending time in nature to help us cultivate deeper focus and counteract the effects of digital overload.
So it's not just about training our minds, but also about creating the right conditions for our minds to thrive.
Exactly. It's like creating fertile soil for a garden.
I like that.
You need the right nutrients, the right amount of sunlight, and the right conditions for those seeds to grow. And then there's the third element of the recognition code, integration velocity.
This one sounds like it's all about speed.
Yeah.
How quickly can we absorb and apply what we've learned?
That's the key. It's not enough to simply recognize patterns.
Right.
We need to be able to integrate those patterns into our actions, our decision-making, and our overall approach to life.
So it's like learning a new dance move.
Uh-huh.
You can watch the instructor demonstrate it 100 times,
Right.
but you won't truly master it until you get on the dance floor and start moving your body.
That's a perfect analogy. Integration velocity is about turning knowledge into action, about bridging the gap between theory and practice.
Okay, so we've got these three elements: cognitive, flexibility, recognition window, and integration velocity.
Yep.
But I have to admit, this whole concept of a shrinking window of opportunity is making me feel a bit anxious.
I understand.
Is it really a use it or lose it situation?
The book certainly presents it that way, but I think it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
While it's true that our brains are constantly adapting and rewiring, I wouldn't say we completely lose the ability to learn new skills or develop new ways of thinking.
So it's not a hard deadline, but more like a window of optimal opportunity.
Exactly. The point is that the earlier we start developing these skills, the easier it will be. And the longer we wait, the more effort it will require.
So even if we can't reach the level of those edge state individuals that the book talks about,
Right.
the ones who can supposedly manipulate reality itself, we can still benefit from developing these pattern recognition skills, even if we start a bit later in life.
Absolutely. The book highlights that even small improvements in our ability to recognize and utilize patterns can have a significant impact on our lives.
Okay.
It's not about becoming a superhero. It's about becoming a better version of ourselves.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, the book takes a pretty wild turn when it introduces this concept of the edge state.
Yeah.
Is this something we should be taking seriously, or is it more like science fiction?
That's where the book definitely enters the realm of speculation.
Okay.
While the concept of heightened pattern recognition is fascinating, the idea that we can manipulate reality itself is a bit more of a stretch.
Yeah, that's where my willing suspension of disbelief starts to waver a bit.
Haha, I hear you.
Mhm.
But even if we put aside the more speculative aspects, the core message about the importance of pattern recognition is still incredibly valuable.
Right.
Whether or not we can bend spoons with our minds, the ability to see patterns and make better decisions is a skill that can dramatically improve our lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in a world that's becoming increasingly complex and uncertain, that skill is more valuable than ever.
Precisely. So while we may not be able to control the external world in the way the book describes, we can certainly gain more control over our own lives, our decisions, and our ability to navigate the challenges ahead.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential benefits of pattern recognition.
Yeah.
But what about the potential downsides? Is there a risk to developing this ability?
That's a great question, and one that the book doesn't fully explore. If this ability does create a significant advantage, as Lone suggests,
Right.
then we have to consider the potential for it to exacerbate existing inequalities.
Right. We already see this with things like access to information and technology.
Mm.
Those who have the resources and skills to navigate the digital world have a distinct advantage over those who don't.
Exactly. So imagine if there's also a pattern recognition divide.
Oh, wow.
Those who can see the patterns will have a significant edge in everything from career success to financial stability to even navigating social situations.
It's almost like a new form of social stratification, but based on cognitive ability.
Right.
And if this ability is truly fading due to digital overload, as the book claims, then we could be heading towards a future where those who are already disadvantaged are further left behind.
It's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
And one that raises some important ethical questions about how we ensure that this ability doesn't widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Right. It's like we need to find a way to democratize this skill, to make it accessible to everyone, regardless of their background or their access to technology.
Exactly. It's about empowering individuals and communities to thrive in this rapidly changing world.
Right.
Not just those who are already privileged.
Okay. So we've got this incredible ability that's potentially fading.
Yeah.
But there are also potential risks to consider. This is a lot to unpack.
It is. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations to explore these ideas from multiple perspectives. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear. The way we think, the way we perceive the world is evolving.
And the choices we make today will shape the reality of tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this part of the deep dive, here's something for you, the listener, to consider. If you could see the underlying patterns that shape success, reality, and even human evolution, would you want to?
That's a good question.
And if so, What would you do with that knowledge? So we ended last time with this big question hanging in the air, right? Like, would we even want to see these patterns if it meant all these potential downsides?
Yeah. It's a question that really makes you think. The book, The Invisible Advantage, it makes a strong argument for, recognizing these patterns.
Right.
But as we've been talking about, it's definitely
It's
complicated.
like we're on the edge of something totally new,
Yeah.
right? With huge potential, but also some real risks.
Yeah.
And this feels super relevant to what our listener originally asked about, self-improvement for people all over the world, especially in developing countries.
Exactly. Think about what could happen in those places if more people had this ability. It wouldn't be like an instant solution, but imagine people who can see opportunities others miss.
Right.
They could come up with creative solutions for their communities. Almost rewrite the rules for how their economies work.
It's like giving them a map in a world that feels like a maze sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
But this closing window thing the book keeps talking about, that seems even more important if we're talking about this kind of global change.
Right.
Yeah.
The urgency alone is emphasizing this idea that we're moving into this algorithmic age.
Okay.
And in this age, the people who get these patterns, who know how to use them, they'll have a huge advantage.
Wow.
And those who don't, they risk being left behind.
So, okay, let's say we agree that this ability is fading. What can we actually do, even with this limited time, to get better at recognizing patterns?
Well, the book gives us some areas to focus on.
Okay.
Remember those 3 parts of the recognition code?
Yeah.
We can start by working on our cognitive flexibility.
So like learning new stuff, experiencing different cultures, even just taking a new route to work to change things up a bit.
Exactly. Anything that makes us think differently and see the world from a fresh perspective.
Okay.
The book also talks about mindfulness and meditation
Right.
to help us block out the noise from all the digital stuff and focus more deeply.
That makes sense. If seeing patterns is about finding the signal in all the noise, then having a quiet mind and being present seems really important.
Absolutely. And then there's integration velocity, putting what we learn into action.
Right.
The book really stresses doing stuff, trying things out, and adjusting based on what happens.
So it's not enough to just see patterns.
Right.
We have to do something with them, test them, and see what works.
Exactly. It's about constantly learning, experimenting, and getting better.
And this brings us back to what our listener was asking about, developing countries. If this recognition code is something anyone can use, could we adapt it to help people in those places deal with all the changes from globalization and technology?
That's an interesting question. What if we had programs that taught people these skills?
Yeah.
So they could see the patterns in global markets, new technologies, even within their own cultures.
So giving them the power to not just adapt to change, but to actually create change.
Right.
To shape their own futures in this world that's constantly in motion.
Exactly. It's about helping them see how everything is connected, to understand that their actions have an impact, and to make choices that make things better for themselves, their communities, and the whole world.
So even though the book presents this closing window as a problem, it's also an opportunity.
Yeah, I see that.
A chance to wake up and see these patterns that have always been there and use them to build a better future.
It's a powerful idea. It reminds us that we're not just along for the ride.
Right.
We have the power to choose how we participate, to get in sync with what makes us successful and create a world that reflects our best hopes.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the invisible advantage, I feel hopeful, but also like I need to do something.
I get that.
We might have a limited window, but we're also at the beginning of a new era, one where seeing patterns might be the key to achieving our full potential.
It's definitely a future worth working towards.
Yeah.
It starts with being aware, opening our minds to the patterns all around us, and choosing to be a part of the forces that are building a better world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And for everyone listening, I want you to think about this. What patterns are you seeing in your own life? And how can you use that knowledge to create a better, more meaningful future for yourself and the people around you? Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep. We'll see you next time.